Hey everyone, welcome to the small group this week. We're so glad you're here. Let's start with a summary.
All right, we're talking this week about the feeding of the 5,000. It's one of the most famous miracles in the Bible, in the New Testament. It's the only miracle besides the resurrection that is recorded for us in all four of the Gospels. So this was a big deal. So let me read this to you. Mark chapter 6, verse 30 through 44 is our text. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." What? But remember, they'd just been on a preaching and miracle working trip. And he had sent them out. They had done these incredible things, and then they've come back to spend time with Jesus and report on that. So it's kind of interesting that he says they should do something. They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them?" "How many loaves?" he asked. "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Now, in John's account, it's a little boy, and it's his lunch. And don't think 5 like Wonder white bread loaves. Think little biscuit type things. So 5 and 2 fish, so a kid's lunch. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups and on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. This word actually can mean gorged. So they ate to their fill. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. And that's just the men. So if they had wives, if they had children, this could be 15, 20, 25,000 people. So it's absolutely incredible. So when I look at this message, when I look at this particular passage, I see a couple things. One, the pressure is building on Jesus and those earlier followers of his, the apostles. Right before this, in Mark 6, we see that Jesus is rejected in Nazareth, and then we see that he sends them out on this trip, and they are preaching, they're healing, and they're driving out demons. So they're doing spiritual warfare. They're exhausted. Then we hear that John the Baptist has been killed. So there's a lot of pressure as we come to this particular moment. And Jesus does this incredible miracle, which is just astounding, and feeds all these people, and definitely would have reminded them of Moses and the manna in the wilderness. It definitely would have had that connotation that God's providing in this way. But we see this incredible pattern. Really, I think the point of this passage is we see the pattern of God's provision. And we see this really throughout the Bible. We see it with a miracle with Elisha. He has some bread and he feeds 100 men. We see it with Moses in the wilderness with the manna. And now we see Jesus with the feeding of the 5,000, and later in the Gospels, the feeding of the 4,000. The 5,000 was a Jewish audience. The 4,000 was in a more Gentile area. And so we see Jesus feeding and providing for all people, really. And so that's kind of the essence, and really it pulls out of him that he is the good shepherd, because he looks and he sees these people and they're kind of wandering around, they're hungry, and he provides for them. He feeds them like a good shepherd. He provides teaching for them. He provides healing for them. Doesn't say that in this text, but in Matthew's account of this, he does physical healing, and he provides physically for them. And ultimately, he's going to provide for their salvation, being the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. And so that's kind of the essence of this message, is Jesus is the good shepherd who provides for his sheep.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. You just chatted a little bit about this, so maybe this question's a little repetitive, but what does this miracle reveal about Jesus?
Well, it reveals that he, in essence, he is Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. It reveals that he is the new Moses. He's the one. Remember, Moses said there's going to be a prophet like me. This is definitely drawing a line from the miracle provision of food in the wilderness to this miraculous provision of food. So it points to he's Messiah. And all the miracles do that. They're all credentials. But this truly was a spectacular one because we see it in all four Gospels.
Okay. So who is it hard for the American church to show compassion to?
I think that's it depends on the church, but in general, the American church, I think, has a hard time showing compassion to the LGBTQ community because that particular community embraces sinful lifestyles as kind of an essence of their identity. Mm-hmm. So it makes it hard to have conversations. It makes it hard to dig in on that. But if you sit down and talk to a person from that community, you often find a story of trauma and brokenness, like all of us. And so I think it's much easier to have compassion. I think politically we're very divided, and so if a church, say, leans to the right, I think sometimes they're not as compassionate about a church that might lean to the left, or people that in the community that don't lean the way politically that the church tends to lean. So, yeah.
Okay. Specifically in the life of Journey, where has God shown his provision?
Well, there have been a lot of instances. The most dramatic recently was clearly the paying off the mortgage. I have never held a check in my hand for $1,712,000, and that was a pretty incredible thing. And took our largest single bill every month of $14,500, and it went away. And so that is an incredible provision. It's something we prayed for years, and it is really a dramatic example in a long string of examples that I could go on and on about, but we've had quite a few of these kind of things. This is just the biggest.
Mm-hmm. How does God's provision typically happen?
Typically, honestly, happens, and the example I just gave was one Christian person is blessed by God and they turn around and they share. They are generous. And whether it's the practice of tithing, consistently to a church, whether it's looking and seeing a need in your church, God provides needs. You have new twin boys and you've had people come alongside you and be generous with their time. So time, talent, treasure, through the generosity of God's people is typically how God's provision works.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the time that we get to turn towards our groups and ask these questions. The first one is, how has God shown provision in your own life? The second is, according to the chronology, the next day the crowd wanted breakfast, and why did Jesus not provide that? The third is, how has God shown abundance in his provision? That is all the questions we have for you this week. And I just if you wanted to get ahead, we have next week's is Mark chapter 11, verses 1 through 11. And that is the beginning of Holy Week when Jesus comes in to Jerusalem. It's the triumphant entry. It's also Palm Sunday, so we're super excited about that. So we will see you soon. Have a wonderful group. Thanks.